Today, I'll give you a quick demo of Vocalance, what it is, how it works, and how you can use it to control your computer hands-free. We'll break this down into three core sections. First, commands, then navigation and mouse control, and then dictation. Let's start with commands. Commands allow you to do anything that your keyboard or your hotkeys would in daily life. For instance, I can say old and new to go to the left and right of the tab that I'm currently on. We can open and close tabs with web open, web close. We can also reopen tabs that we mistakenly close. For instance, new, web close, web reopen. You can scroll the content on a web page by saying ground and wind, which will press page up and page down on the page that you're on. Importantly, most commands support parameterization. This means if I want to go to the bottom of the page, I don't have to say ground 10 times, I can just say ground 10. And this will execute the ground command 10 times. This applies to most commands. For instance, I can say old 2 to move 2 tabs to the left of the current one. And just to give you some more examples, you can do just about anything that you could do with your keyboard or shortcuts. For instance, click, click, right click, escape, left, right, up, down. You get the picture. You can find a full list of all the commands that Vocalance supports on the Vocalance website and an explanation of what they do, but you can also find a streamlined version of that directly in the UI that Vocalance ships with. If you make your way to the commands section of the UI, you will find a long list of all the commands that are available, and some of them might have obscure names, in which case you can just click on the info button and you'll have a short description of what that command actually does. You can also change the command phrase if you don't like it or you struggle to remember it. You can also add your own custom commands if there's something that you want to see but that isn't already available. For instance, let's say I want to add a hotkey that refreshes my web page. Then I can just call this refresh. And then I'll give it the actual hotkey, which on Google Chrome is just Control plus R. Then we click on add. And if you scroll to the very bottom, there will be a custom section of your commands and you'll see your refresh command right there. If I now go back to a web page, let's say YouTube, and I say refresh, you'll see that it refreshes the page. Custom commands can also be deleted by clicking info and delete command, which will make it disappear. You cannot do this with built-in commands. Now that we've covered command shortcuts and keyboard substitution, I want to get into mouse substitution and actually moving around on screen. There's going to be two main ways we do this. The first is through a grid system, and the second is through landmarks. I'll talk about each in a moment, and I'll start with the grid. You can activate the grid by saying the grid keyword go, and this will open up a numbered cell range, and if you now want to move at a certain point in the screen, you just say the name of the cell that corresponds to that point. For instance, if I wanted to click on the YouTube logo here, I'd say 7.3. And now one important caveat here is you must say the number of the cell as a sequence of digits. So for instance, I said 7.3 instead of 73. Now you'll have noticed this automatically clicks at the location that we go to. So it moves the mouse and then clicks on the cell location. Whereas if you want to just hover or move the mouse to that location without clicking, you can use the keyword hover. And let's say I want to go to this Word doc tab, I can say 611. And now I have not actually clicked on it, I've just moved the mouse over to it. Another important thing is the number of cells in the grid overlay. This is totally customizable. You can change this at runtime and be dynamic in the way that you use your cells when you want to be more specific or less specific by just adding the number of cells you want after the activation keyword. For instance, I can say go 2000. Escape. If you want to change the actual default number of cells that you see every time you say the keyword activation, go or hover, then you can go to settings in the UI, make your way to the grid settings, and here you'll see the default number of cells that appears when you say go or hover. And you can change this to whatever you want. For instance, if I change this to 500 and I click save, now when I say go, I'll see 500 cells instead of seeing 1,000. Now, the second way to navigate the screen is through landmarks. And landmarks are like connected superhighways of parts of the screen that you visit very often and you can reference by name. To see how marks work, let's first make our way to the UI again, and we can go this time to the marks section. And here you'll have some simple instructions for how to create a mark, and I'll walk you through these in a sec. And then here you'll be able to manage the marks that you create. Now, what is a mark? A mark is just a pin drop on the screen that you can give a name to. For instance, let's say I use the notepad a lot. All I have to do is go over the notepad with my mouse, then say mark notes, and this will immediately create a mark named notes at this location, so that now the next time I say notes, it'll move the mouse to that location and click automatically. You can also manage your marks from here, which means deleting the ones you don't need anymore. And also, importantly, if you forget where your marks are, you can just click on Show Marks, which will open an overlay marking the spot of all your marks. The idea is you want to give names to, for instance, all your taskbar icons or all the static icons in your UI web page, and then use these words to navigate the screen quickly instead of always having to go through the grid system. The next and last core component of Vocalance that I want to talk about is dictation. There's going to be 4 main types of dictation, and we'll go through them one by one. The simplest dictation method is to be used for Google searches or quick keyword searches. It has no punctuation and it stops after 1 second of silence. Let's take a look. Web open, type, what's the weather going to be like tomorrow? Enter, and there you have it. If instead you want to do proper dictation for note-taking or for writing messages, then you'll want one of the other 3 types of dictation. Let's first move to a notepad where we can transcribe things. Notes. Next, let's look at the first of these 3 proper dictation systems. The first one can be activated with the keyword green, and this will start listening and transcribing for the words we say, but it will only start pasting them at the cursor location after 2 seconds of silence. We can test that right now. Now, the idea is once you're happy with everything that's on screen and that has been pasted and transcribed, you can say a stop word so that it stops transcribing. That's where it differs from the previous method. Amber. And that's going to interrupt the dictation. This method is good because it allows you to make real-time edits since the transcription happens at the cursor position. So you can move the cursor around and retranscribe from here, for instance, or you can fix a couple of mistranscribed words, etc., all in the same session and all rather quickly. The downside is, while it's pretty accurate, as you can tell, it's not always perfect, especially when it comes to punctuation and capitalization of words, and also it won't be very accurate if you pause a lot, since it transcribes the words that you say in between pauses, and it won't have a lot of context if you pause very frequently. So if any of those things bother you, you should try the second of the 3 proper dictation methods. This one can be activated with the keyword visual green. This will open a dictation window where we can see transcription as it happens. It's also much faster because it's going to be doing near real-time transcription as opposed to transcription in between pauses. Once you're happy with the outputs of the dictation, which you can see in the window, you'll say the same stop word as before, amber, and that will paste all the outputs of the transcription at the cursor location just like before. The last dictation mode that I want to show you is AI dictation. In this mode, we first do normal transcription, and then we pass the text output from the transcription to an AI model that will clean up our text and then paste some cleaned output at the cursor location. You can activate it by saying Smart Green. This is a test of the smart dictation system. This will still display real-time recognition outputs on the left-hand side, but then it will pass outputs to an AI model on the right-hand side when I'm ready to. Amber. So you can see now it's going to process what I've passed it, and then it's going to respond with a slightly cleaned output. In this case, the text is very minimal, so the amount of cleaning and reformatting will also be minimal. Now, what is this reformatting that the AI model does? By default, there's going to be a default prompt that the AI model uses. And this is something along the lines of clean the text, make it more synthetic and clear, fix any grammar mistakes or punctuation mistakes, etc. But the core selling point of this whole feature is that you can make it into whatever you want it to be. If we make our way to the Vocalance UI and then we go to the Dictation section, we can see there's two boxes. On the right, we have a Manage Prompts box in which there's only one default prompt. This is the prompt I already described to you. On the left-hand side, we have an Add Custom Prompt box, and this is where we, the user, can specify a prompt for the AI to follow. There is no limit to how many prompts you can create, and the idea is you can cycle through them depending on your use case. Let's go through a worked example right now. Okay, so I've filled this out. I have a prompt title, which doesn't matter for the model. It's just a way to differentiate prompts on the right-hand side. And then I have the prompt instructions, which is what the model is actually going to end up consuming. And here I've just told it to format the text that I'm going to dictate as an email and start with Dear Recipient and end with Best Rick. Then I'm also telling it to make the text polite, but not too verbose so that it doesn't start waffling too much. Once we're happy with all this, we click Add, which will add our prompt to the right-hand side. We can also edit it if we're ever not happy with it and save changes. And the idea here is you can now cycle between these. By default, the model ships with the default prompt and always uses that one. But as soon as you select a different one, it will remain selected until you switch to a new one. So right now, for instance, we'll be using the email prompt the next time that we use Smart Dictation. Let's test that out. Smart Green. There's some damp in the living room wall. Can somebody take a look? Amber? And there you have it. This is just a quick, simple example, but you can keep playing around with your prompt until you get outputs that you like, and obviously there's going to be much more useful use cases than formatting things as emails. Now, as an extra, one last thing I want to touch on is so far we've always activated commands or Vocalance functionality with spoken word. And that is the main way to interact with Vocalance. But a second way is to interact with raw sounds. So if you make your way to the Sounds tab of the Vocalance UI, you'll have a Add Sound option to the left. And here you can specify a sound name, which is just, again, an internal identifier for you to recognize that sound. For instance, I can say pop. Okay, to indicate like a pop of my lips, and then the number of samples that you want to train the model on. And usually 5 is about enough. Once you're happy with that, you click record and make the sound that you want to record 5 times. This will make the sound appear in the Manage Sounds box with the name that you gave it. Now, right now, the sound is useless. It's not connected to anything. What we want to do is to map this sound to a given command so that when we make the sound, Vocalance executes the command. And you have 3 options here. You can either map it to one of the keyboard shortcut commands that we saw in the very beginning, or you can map it to a mark name, or you can map it to the grid overlay activation words. So for instance, if I select commands, I can map this to the ground command, right? So that I can scroll up and down with sounds. Now, if we go to a scrollable page and I make the sound, you'll see that it scrolls page down every time that I say that sound. So you can do this for any mapping that you want. Feel free to create multiple sounds, give them different names. You can use clicks of your tongue, you can use whistles, all sorts of nonverbal sounds, and then check whether the model is good enough at recognizing them. That was everything I had to show you. So hopefully that gave you a good intro to Vocalance capabilities. If you have comments or feedback, please let us know. And if you want more information, as always, go to the website where you will find full instructions and examples.